Right, well, good afternoon to everyone, and welcome to the first in a series of 1-hour HE Innovate webinars. The title for this webinar is How is Higher Education Responding to the Challenges Created by the Covid-19 Outbreak? And we're delighted to have you all here. My name is Rebecca Allenson. I work for Technopolis as part of the HE Innovate team, and I'll be your moderator for this session. Before introducing today's webinar, I have a few housekeeping issues to cover. Today's webinar is being recorded. We welcome your questions and your comments, and there is a live Q&A where you can enter your questions for the speakers at any time. We will have time after the two main speakers for a Q&A session, and if you have a particular speaker in mind, please feel free to indicate by adding their name, which is Paul or Rui. There is a comment section to the right of your screen, which I know some of you are already using. Feel free to add comments at any time. However, if there are questions, it's much easier for us if they're entered into the Q&A function so that we can keep an eye on it. We will also be inviting you to take part in a couple of polls during the presentations, and the results will be shared. And as you know, sometimes things go wrong. I'm hoping not, but please go with us and we will try and make everything as smooth as possible. We have a team on hand who can hopefully ensure everything goes well, and I'd like to thank them in advance. So today we have a brief introduction from our hosts, the European Commission and the OECD, before handing over to our two guest speakers. So without further delay, I'd like to introduce Begonia Arano, the Head of Unit for Innovation and the EIT at the European Commission, DG Education and Culture, and Dr. Lucia Crismano, Acting Head of the SME and Entrepreneurship Division at the OECD Center for Entrepreneurship.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. Thank you also for all the organization, to all of you, and welcome everybody attending this webinar. I am extremely pleased to welcome you all in this first HE Innovate webinar of a series. And first of all, I do sincerely hope that you and your families are doing well in these uncertain times that we are all going through. Clearly, the COVID-19 crisis is having a huge impact on our societies, on our co-citizens, our health systems, and our social and economic environments. And of course, it has a big impact on higher education, on the staff, on the parents, and the organizations as well, and the respective ecosystems. From the start, the higher education institutions have faced unknown challenges and had to move within an extremely short period of time from on-site teaching and learning to online teaching and learning. And certain changes that were unimaginable just a few weeks ago happened suddenly and extremely short time as well. So it is in this frame that we are having the pleasure to launch today, together with Lucia Crismano from the OECD, this series of HE Innovate webinars. So as you might know, but otherwise, just as a reminder, we, the European Commission and the OECD, launched the HE Innovate in 2013. It is a guiding framework to support higher education institutions and systems to develop their innovative and entrepreneurial potential. We are convinced that the need for developing and supporting innovative and entrepreneurial higher education institutions systems is now even more relevant and more important than ever. We are convinced that these type of institutions will empower staff and students to apply innovation, entrepreneurship, and creativity in research, teaching, and the pursuit of and use of knowledge across all boundaries. And they will also contribute effectively to the enhancement of learning in a societal environment, which is now going to be characterized by high levels of uncertainty and complexity. Innovative and entrepreneurial higher education institutions will equip students with the knowledge, skills, and mindset that they will need to tackle these problems, the societal problems, in an innovative way, and to create values in the organization, in the economy, and in the society at large. And this will be possible because they are dedicated to creating public value via a process of open engagement, mutual learning, discovery, and exchange with all stakeholders in society at a local, national, and international level. So just to summarize a little bit, so far in H Innovate, 1,200 higher education institutions have been using this tool to understand their level of development in innovative and entrepreneurial higher education. And in addition, 9 countries have implemented a system-level approach via the H Innovate country reviews. And we have also launched projects to provide better support to higher education institutions in the process of defining and implementing relevant action plans. But H Innovate is also very amply recognized as a powerful tool and is now reaching to other initiatives, other key initiatives. So as an example, I would mention that H Innovate will be used as a tool for the European Institute of Innovation and Technology and its Knowledge and Innovation KICs to support innovation capacity development of higher education institutions. And likewise, in the framework of the update of the Digital Education Action Plan, which, as you know, is one of the key priorities of the European Commission in the next period, H Innovate can be also instrumental to support digital transformation of higher education institutions. And we have also seen that H Innovate can help to connect regional authorities, companies, and higher education institutions to refine the smart specialization strategies of their regions. Many higher education institutions, their staff and students have reacted, as I was saying earlier on, already in an entrepreneurial and innovative way to face the challenges of the crisis. And with this H Innovate webinar series, we will show some of these examples. We want to support sharing of experiences and mutual learning, but also networking and collaboration to tackle common challenges. During the series, we would like to look at issues that are urgent and that require a very quick reaction, and at issues that might need more reflection. We would like to address possible short-term measures and solutions, but also those longer-term solutions, and discuss and imagine together what the future should hold. We are very thankful to the speakers that have volunteered to share their experiences with us in today's webinar and those ones to come. And certainly, as Rebecca was saying earlier on, we would like to invite you all to ask questions and share your own experiences. I wish for all of us an inspiring and stimulating discussions. And now I stop here and hand over to my colleague Lucia. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Begonia, and thanks a lot to you and all colleagues in DG EAC for partnering with the OECD in this initiative, and more broadly, I have to say, for the strategic partnership on which now, since some time, we have entered with HI Innovate. Allow me to stress that this is a very important activity for us at the OECD Center for Entrepreneurship, and as you emphasized, it couldn't be more timely. We really believe that it takes even greater value, the partnership with the European Commission and the engagement with all the HI Innovate experts at these challenging times. As you highlighted, we are facing a crisis that is unprecedented in recent history, but not only for clearly the amplitude and the speed, the pace at which it has arrived, catching many of us and many of our organizations unprepared to such an event. But it's also questioning the practices, the models, the forms of interaction and knowledge exchange that we used to have within our organizations and across different types of organizations. And it requires innovative responses. It's no more business as usual. It will hardly be business as usual as we go, hopefully very soon or as soon as possible, out of the current situation. But in this context, entrepreneurship has never been as important. Entrepreneurship intended not simply as an activity, but as a mindset, as a way of approaching short-term and as you highlighted, also longer-term issue. Of course, entrepreneurship has been a driving element, this change in mindset and attitude of the HR Innovate activity. And we see, of course, that entrepreneurship as a mindset is fundamental for higher education institutions and systems to generate interdisciplinary research platform, but also to develop linkages between higher education institutions and between those and their communities, the business environment, the firms of all ages and size, and societies more at large. And entrepreneurship is these days also mostly needed to undertake possibly one of the greatest challenges of the crisis, which is accelerating the digital transition. Just now, we are living this moment of acceleration. In our activities, I believe all of us were forced to undertake new practices at a higher pace that we could have planned. But it's not just a matter of using digital tools, it's really a question of think differently through the use of these digital tools, think differently in the organization of activities and how to address long-term challenges. Just to make an example, we were forced, basically also in the ongoing work on HR Innovate review, to change work practices. We are working these days with Sweden, and when we planned, we were hoping to be there these days to experience and to discuss with colleagues in Sweden about HR Innovate. And we were forced to move very quickly to a remote way of working. So we have already started, it's being implemented remotely, although we all agree, I think, that the live interaction can bring something to all of us. So we hope we will be able to revert to this soon. But the crisis in this sense has represented clearly an accelerator, a catalyzer of change. And I hope that the discussion today will enable us to learn about good practices of how higher education institutions have been quick to adapt, how they have been adapting, and how do they see the current acceleration in relation to the long-term challenges that you have been highlighting. Of course, these are two different levels, but possibly the experimentation that we are undertaking today will also enable to set up longer-term responses to these changes. And these are changes, as mentioned earlier, that are needed for the higher education systems themselves, but we see them also as extremely important for the contribution that higher education institutions can bring to the resilience of communities, of firms and societies. Never as before, resilience is a very important matter. In terms of, in economic terms, as Begonia highlighted, the crisis is a massive crisis. We know, for instance, that in the case of entrepreneurs and small business, this is causing major disruptions. So it's a moment where all organizations and institutions can join forces to ensure that we go out of the crisis, all of our organizations more resilient and ready also to adapt quickly to a totally new future. But without any further delay, I think we are here to listen to our experts. So I'm very pleased to introduce the first speaker, Rui Coutinho, who is Executive Director of the Porto Business School and entrepreneur himself. So I'm sure he can bring also this perspective in the discussion. And I understand that Rui has been one of the most active HA Innovate expert since its launch. So we couldn't have a better start. And Rui, thanks a lot for being with us, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Lucia. Well, first and foremost, hi everybody. I hope you're all safe. Special shout out to my good friends from the OECD, from the European Commission, and from the AG Innovate Experts Group. A bunch of them are participating in the webinar. I hope you and your families are all safe and well. I've been using this metaphor to try to describe what has been the last 7 weeks of our lives at Porto Business School. It's like we were conducting a cruise ship, and then suddenly we had to steer that cruise ship as if it is a speedboat. And we are navigating, we are governing this massive cruise ship as if it is a speedboat. Agility, flexibility, adaptability, fast thinking. It's great that Paul speaks after me, because first and foremost, he will do a much better job, and second, because it will bring the importance of the entrepreneurial mindset. And this is what we needed to bring. I teach innovation and entrepreneurship in our MBA programs and in executive masters, and I really had to put my action where my mouth has been for many of these years. We've been teaching the importance of the ambidexterity on organizations, the importance of focusing on execution, but also creating and innovating at any given moment. And in this past 7 weeks, we had to really create, innovate, and execute in record time. We had to, perhaps we went through an entrepreneurship process. Like we had to create an idea, build a startup, scale it to become a big corporation in 7 weeks. This has been our what we had to do. Translating, we had to move all our programs. And by the way, for Porto Business School, this means that we are lucky, because we are a small unit inside the University of Porto. We have postgraduate and post-experience programs, MBAs, executive masters, executive education. And this means that we have roughly 1,000 students at any given moment enrolled in our long programs. And so we had to transition and move all this programs, MBAs and executive masters, in 2 days, from full presential to full online. And at the same time, we had to do it while transitioning all the staff of the organization into a full remote and home office work. So right now, in 2 days, we had to, manage a whole institution from 60 different households to provide, without interruptions, classes, non-stop classes for the circa 1,000 students involving close to 100 professors. And this was absolutely challenging, as you can imagine, and pretty much everybody involved in higher education is feeling this. It was not an easy task. It was not an easy process. Our first priority was protecting the health and safety of all of our students and our faculty and our staff. That was our first priority, and we are happy to say that we had 0 infections at Porto Business School campus. So this was the most important thing we had to do, our contribution to flatten the curve here in Portugal. But then we went through so many different phases, different stages in this process, and it's only 7 weeks, but it has already seemed like it was 3 years into this. So we moved from full presential to full online, and the first priority was, of course, after protecting the safety and well-being of our community, was to find the technology that could enable us to do this. We had some online programs. We had some technology set up, but I would say it wouldn't represent even 1% of our business, of our activities. So we had to first and foremost understand what technologies could we use, and then after the technologies, it would be to educate, to teach, to make sure that both faculty and students could connect to these technologies and could use these technologies. And of course, what happened was in the first days was a pure translation from presential to online, like a copy paste. We just changed the medium, we just changed the channel. And of course, that was interesting. We managed to achieve the first goal, send everyone home without interrupting any classes. Of course, by the end of the second or third day, everybody realized that it's not the same. You can't copy paste presential classes to video conference classes. And what we were doing was pure video conferencing, you know, putting WebEx or Zoom technologies and enabling people to communicate remotely. So we had to then focus on this adjustment. And this adjustment is a pedagogical adjustment. And it's a hard one. And I have to say that there's a funny meme going on the internet about how COVID-19 did more for digital transformation than any strategy or any leadership or any vision in any company. Well, I can say that perhaps this current situation has done more to accelerate the distance learning methodologies and their implementation in higher education than any strategy, any technology widespread, or any vision from any leader. We had to do it, and we relied on our entrepreneurial mindset with a very lean approach to, you know, we've been using this expression here in Portugal. It makes sense in Portuguese, in English might not make sense, but the idea that done is better than perfect. So you go with to MVP mode. We want a minimum viable product that can easily and in a fast way enable distance learning classes, and then we will refine it. Then we will make it better. So that's what we've been doing in the second stage of the way we manage the situation. Understanding the pedagogical adaptation that is required, supporting our faculty and our students in those processes, bringing better technology and more technology into the equation to have more collaborative ways of learning, even when people are remote and distant, to, for instance, overcome the problems with experiential learning, with hands-on learning and practice learning, or for instance, to overcome the problems with group work and this kind of things. So this was an extraordinary movement, even though this means that we have been working, especially in the staff of Porto Business School, much more hours than usual. Everybody's exhausted because we had to, you know, again, bring this cruise ship into a speedboat operation mode. So it was hard. And by the way, if I can launch already a poll out there, because it was really hard for us to adjust to distance learning modes. So I'd like to understand from our audience, how hard was it for your university to adjust to distance learning modes? And I've prepared a poll. I don't know if we can send it out there right now. I believe it might be already on. As a panelist, I think I cannot see the poll, but oh, there it is. Thank you so much. So please do vote, okay, on question number 1. And by the way, you can also go to question number 2. What was the main challenge of implementing this adjustment? Because for our case, so I've already explained, it was hard. We did it, but it's an ongoing process. It's I would say, not finished process at all. We had, for instance, to adjust and make adjustments program by program. Then we went to the specifics of each program, and then inside each program, the specifics of each course, and then you fine-tune. Of course, we had to adjust our calendar. We are adjusting our calendars. Also because as we deal with postgraduate and post-experience education, lots of the vast majority of our students are working from home. They have their kids at home, also having school from home. So the level of complexity in people's lives, in our students' lives, has increased dramatically. So we need to understand that their attention, their focus, they're worried about their families, they're worried about their jobs. So we need to understand that their focus might not be the most assertive one. So we adjusted calendar. We adjusted, for instance, evaluation modes, but we haven't stopped evaluation. we had to also be creative and innovative under that perspective. What really enabled, what was the main challenge in our adjustment? Well, I can tell you that we went through different stages. The first challenge was we thought faculty would be faculty. The faculty would I wouldn't say refuse, but at least would generate some issues of adjusting into that methodology. And don't forget that we have been managing this by the day. So right in the beginning, even before the state of emergency was declared here in Portugal, nobody knew how long this would take. So it's got to be something, a couple of weeks, okay? And if it is a couple of weeks, let's postpone it. Why are we bringing this to online? We immediately made a decision that was a very important decision for us. No interruptions. And no interruptions meant also that it was our function, our job, our mission to also provide some sense of normality in our students' life. Everything else was being disrupted. At least their Porto Business School learning experience could have been kept, protected in some sense. Of course adjusted, of course in a different way, but to provide this sense of normality, I still go to classes, even though everything else around me is uncertain and ambiguous. And so the beginning, faculty was our main concern. How well will they adjust? How well will they respond? Well, the response was absolutely incredible. People that had always refused online and distance learning methodologies were very quick to react and to adapt, and they are now discovering a brave and admirable new world for teaching and learning activities. It's wonderful. Again, this is doing much more for the acceleration of online learning than any other strategies before. The second main challenge we had were students. And it was students mainly because of the, I would say, the environment around. Many of them went into layoff. They're afraid of losing their jobs or even losing their jobs. They are concerned with their families, protecting their parents, which are in risk population or might be affected. Porto is the city in Portugal with the highest number of infected and highest number of deaths. And it's even though the country is doing, I would say, it's managing this situation well. We have prevented our national health system from collapsing. Actually, we flattened the curve, but it's not an even distribution. In the north, especially in the Porto area, things have been really, really hard. So suddenly our students had some sort of lack of focus. And we needed to understand that. So for us, providing them a sense of normality was also forcing them to keep a normality that no longer existed. And as the weeks passed by, we felt that this was important. So we adjusted the calendars. We had to refine a little bit our programs. And now we are in the third stage, and I'll stop here. And perhaps, Joshua, we could see the results if everybody has already voted, because then we can have a cool understanding of what has been for your universities. So the most voted question on the most voted answer on question 1, how hard was it for your university to adjust to distance learning modes? It was easy because we leveraged on existing infrastructure and learning management systems. That's great, 37%. 33% responded hard because we were not fully prepared and faced some initial resistances. And then 26% very hard because the nature of our curricula was not compatible with distance learning. For Porto Business School, I would hesitate to vote on hard or very hard. That was our situation. And regarding the main challenges, well, a combination of factors, staff work, faculty commitment, students comprehension. So this was the most voted answer from Porto Business School. As I mentioned, in the first moment, it was the faculty commitment. That was not a problem, as big a problem as we thought. Then it was the students' comprehension and acceptance, not because they refuse the methodology, not because they don't like the methodology, even though, of course, lots of them complain. I am not paying for this. This was not what I agreed with you. I paid, or I enrolled in a presential learning, and I don't want to migrate into an online learning. You get this kind of situations because the vast majority adapted and accepted the idea of the online and distance learning. The problem came slightly later, when everything around you seems to be collapsing, when you're worried about families, you're worried about your well-being, your jobs, and so on. The lack of focus became the biggest problem. So perhaps I would stop here at this moment, and then we could take further discussion later down the road.
Okay, thank you very much, Rui, for your presentation. A huge undertaking, and interesting to hear about an institution adapting at Formula One pace, which I know is unusual in the higher education sector. So we have a few questions, one of which has been moved because Paul seems to want to answer it later, just to let you know. So I thought I'd start, I think you probably see them as well, Rui. And do you think this is a critical moment which will also push faculties which are traditionally less entrepreneurial, the arts, literature, human science, for example?
Absolutely. I think this the challenges are transversal. They are not, you know, there was this idea that online and distance learning works better in some areas, in some fields of expertise. I think, in total honesty, I think that's not the question. It can work in any area, and we have seen this kind of adjustments. We have seen outstanding examples of practice-based classes being done and undertaken online and with distance learning and collaborative tools, and providing great learning experiences and great knowledge consolidation for the students. So indeed, I have to say, I have to be honest, after these 7 weeks, my gut feeling is the following. If you're a great professor, you are a great professor, whatever the channel you're using, whatever the medium you're using, you will adjust. If your pedagogical background, if your pedagogical foundation is solid, it will stand any strong winds, it will stand any storm. Of course, then there are areas that present also opportunities. And I hate to use the expression opportunities under this pandemic, but we have them. They're out there. Let me give you an example. One of our first gut feelings was people are at home. They really need, and they are eager to get access to knowledge in executive education mode, short formats. So we created, in less than 1 week, 15 executive education programs, from 4-hour programs to 40-hour programs. And right now we have more than 400 students enrolled in these programs in, well, it was a matter of 3-4 weeks. So you see the opportunity there. And what kind of programs do we have? We have technical programs. We have more soft skills programs. They are very transversal. So I would say this presents a challenge, but also it has accelerated in a transversal way this adoption of pedagogical online tools, and I think this is an inevitable transformation that we're taking.
Mm-hmm. So I also have it's more of a sort of question around whether you already have any guidelines or best practices for this transition.
Well, yeah. One of the things we did 1 week into the thing, whatever that is, was to create a toolkit of everything that we were doing well and not doing well, and immediately with tips, recommendations, especially for that transition moment, for the adaptation. How do you adapt your existing curriculum into, which was designed for presential classes, into online classes? And we have translated, we are translating that toolkit, and we will share, and I can share with everyone. Perhaps you could even put it on the AG Innovate website, I don't know. But the idea is that we shared some best practices and also some bad practices. I think it's important because we need to learn also from the mistakes, and we have made so many mistakes, and that is interesting. We accepted failure when we fixed and iterated and pivoted in a very fast way. One of the things that were, I would say, the most important, most valuable learning from our side was the idea that the copy paste, the just move into video conference will not work. It doesn't work. It can be a good solution as a life raft for the first 2 days, but then you immediately have to focus on the pedagogical aspects of the program. And that's where the foundation of the learning experience is, in the pedagogical aspects, and they require adaptation. And that's why we focused on our toolkit exactly to support that, to do some pedagogical support to our faculty and also, by the way, to our students.
Okay, no, thank you very much for that. And we have a worry from someone here about, given the attitude to the switch to e-learning, do you think this will be the end of online open universities? And this is from Alessio, whose wife works for one, and she's almost worried.
Hi, Alessio. Ciao. I'm not sure. What I know is that universities, most likely higher education institutions, business schools, you name it, will finally understand the dimension of the opportunity out there on the online learning. Okay, and that might mean that they might invade the space of open universities, for instance. They might invade the space, but don't get me wrong, that space was already being invaded by LinkedIn Learning, Coursera, edX. It was already happening. What might happen is that higher education institutions might start having bigger appetite, and because they might have a bigger appetite for that, they might set up better strategies, and especially more strategies with better and higher resources to really have proper online and distance learning activities in their curriculum.
Okay, thanks. So I'm just going to have one more question, and any other questions that we have, we'll have a look at later, and we'll also try and pick up on those through HE Innovate in general. So this one's from Barbara on how do you implement a reliable assessment in distance learning?
Hi, Barbara. I hope you're well. Yeah, that was a big issue. First and foremost, you really need to adjust your evaluations. So what we did was we mainly migrated into group and individual works, essays, research works. We went into a model of take-home exams, which is very classical. Exams where you can consult support books or support or even online. We were already doing it physically, so there was some sort of widespreading of the use of this kind of technique. Of course, this requires a different elaboration of the exams, the way we pose the questions, the level of what we are demanding or what we are assessing, of course, changes. For things that are for exams, classical exams that we really need to do in a more classical way, we have been using Proctor, which is a technology that allows you to really scan and film anyone that is doing that exam, whatever they are, and it traces the eyes of the student that is doing the exam. So if the eyes turn around, Proctor might give some warnings. So we had to rely and go to use technology to support us with that. There's amazing technology out there that we can use, but also there was a redesign in the assessment methodologies that we have been using to let's say privilege more or prioritize more everything that is research work, essays, individual work, group works, or even take-home exams, as we call it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, thank you ever so much. Absolutely brilliant to hear from you today, Rui. So I'm going to move swiftly on to our second expert today. We've got Paul Coyle, the founder and director of the Entrepreneurial Mindset Network. Paul is also a long-standing HE Innovate expert. We've been working with him for a number of years, and so I'll hand over to Paul. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully everybody can see that. And I have a short presentation that I'd like to make. Okay, so here we go. Hello everybody, my name is Paul Coyle and I'm the director of the Entrepreneurial Mindset Network. Our mission is to provide practical definitions of the mindset and to share experiences amongst our members. It's free to join the network, and we currently have members in 59 countries, which I always take to be a sign of the strength of the global interest in the mindset. People want to know what it is and how to put it to practical use. As the director of the network, I'm either working at my desk or travelling to international meetings. So pre-lockdown, I was working in my office to prepare the content of a 3-hour mindset masterclass and getting ready to travel to Italy, Portugal, Poland and the UK to deliver it. Then, of course, all those planned meetings became completely out of the question. And like many of the people in today's webinar, I've been trying to adapt and to move more of my activity online. The main task I've been working on has been to develop and launch an online course, The Power of the Entrepreneurial Mindset. The course is not just aimed at people who want to set up, run and scale a business. The premise of all our work is that anybody can benefit from thinking and acting like an entrepreneur. Therefore, the course also supports academics and students from any subject discipline. I think there have been two main challenges, which no doubt other people are also experiencing. The first was to learn the audio, video and hosting software from scratch in less than 2 weeks. And the second challenge was to make sure that the content requires active, not passive learning. In each module, there are 2 hours of practical exercises designed to engage the learner and half an hour of video instruction. What I've learned, which is what I had expected, is that producing this type of content is very time consuming. I reckon I need 1 full week to prepare each 2.5-hour module. The first module of the course is called Introducing the Entrepreneurial Mindset, and the second module is Coping with Change, Creating Change. For me, an essential idea about the mindset is that it empowers individuals to deal with change, not just to be able to cope with change, but to contribute to and to lead change. Again, many people in this webinar will be engaged in change management, helping their institutions to become more entrepreneurial. Our starting point is usually that change is positive and that to make it happen, we just need to devise a strategy, allocate some budget and set some deadlines. If only it were that straightforward. The hard part is to get people on board, to help them to see the part they could play and motivate them to make their contribution. To be successful, therefore, we need a good understanding of how individuals and organisations deal with change, and the HE Innovate project over many years now has been supporting such transformations in higher education. For example, in 2016, an HE Innovate conference was held in Brussels. It was called Facilitating Change in Higher Education, with the subtitle I3, Ignite, Inspire and Innovate. Ignite, how to excite people and get them interested. Inspire, how to motivate people to get on board and take action. Innovate, how to enable people to change established practices and introduce new ways of working. I presented one of the sessions at the conference in a track with the theme of leadership and governance. My presentation, Leading Change, gave a number of recommendations about leading entrepreneurial change in higher education. And these recommendations were drawn from lessons gained at prior HE Innovate events, which had been held in England, Scotland, Spain and Wales. I think the recommendations are still valid, even if the current context feels very different. So I've made sure that a handout of the Leading Change slides will be available for people to download after today's webinar. I think the reason that the recommendations remain valid is because they're realistic. They acknowledge that significant change is difficult because it generates positive and negative responses. It creates new opportunities, but also generates uncertainty and complexity. If you're responsible for initiating and delivering change, I think it's vital to remember that individuals react in different ways. And this, I think, is exactly what we're seeing in the current crisis. Some people enjoy the thrill of the ride and some people find it terrifying. I find it useful to think of each person being on their own personal roller coaster, meaning that we're all experiencing a range of ups and downs, but each of us at different points in time. That means we need two things. Firstly, resilience to deal with the emotions, the doubts, the worries and the fear. And secondly, we need to exercise sensitivity to where other people are at the moment. For some people, the changes triggered by the current crisis are extremely difficult, even catastrophic, and they are going to be in survival mode for some time to come. In good or bad times, it's useful to see change as a journey. At the moment, everything's on hold and we're all asking, when are we going to get back to normal? But what is normal? Does it mean going back to how things were or transitioning to new ways of working? Will we simply fall back on old ways or will we reevaluate how best to meet the needs of our students, business and society? Will we continue with traditional ways of teaching? Have online teaching instead, or a mixture of the two? To understand where higher education can go next, we need to understand where it is now. Let's think about higher education in terms of an entrepreneurial journey, from startup to scale-up to shake-up. My take is that the majority of HE has always been in the startup phase, with each institution having a small number of specialist entrepreneurship programs, maybe some optional generalist provision, perhaps a research centre, an incubator, but very few institutions have worked out how to scale entrepreneurial thinking to the organisation as a whole. The assumption of the title of our webinar is that the Covid-19 crisis has created new problems for higher education. However, I would argue that it has merely exacerbated problems that already existed. Why have universities only now moved to online learning? Why have staff at a UK university been protesting this week against the move to online learning, describing it as cynical, reckless and destructive? Is it because they want an academic debate on the merits of traditional teaching versus online? Or is it because they're worried about contractual issues, about the ongoing casualisation of employment and the prospect of new redundancies? The crisis reveals the existing weaknesses of the HE business model. Even before the crisis, it would have been prudent to have asked yourself, will I still have a job next year? It's just that this question seems more obvious now. Now things are worse and many parts of our economies are facing potentially catastrophic change. What makes us think that higher education will be protected and insulated from those changes? When a higher education institution experiences a crisis, it always focuses back on its core business of recruiting students, teaching and research. And that's when you find out what the real level of commitment is to other issues. What will it say about the value higher education really places on entrepreneurship if this issue now falls much lower on the list of priorities? How entrepreneurial is higher education if it can't survive without billions in government bailouts? What do the bailouts for the self-employed, for SMEs, for corporations, and even for billionaires tell us about entrepreneurship? Has the crisis actually revealed the fragility of the majority of existing business models? What are the implications for the economy? If one domino falls, is the whole system going to come crashing down? Can universities continue to claim that they equip students with the resilience they will need for self-employment? Is this where we give up on entrepreneurship? Or is this when we campaign to convince people that entrepreneurial ways of thinking and acting have never been more important? I want to turn our attention to what each of us can do about these many problems. If you're participating in this webinar today, then most likely you are a champion of entrepreneurship in higher education. And the idea of networks like the HE Innovate community or the Entrepreneurial Mindset Network is to support people like you. If you have an entrepreneurial mindset, you won't be discouraged by all the challenges we face at the moment. You won't be asking, when is somebody else going to do something about this? You'll be saying to yourself, what am I going to do? What am I going to do today? I would suggest that each of us has to double our efforts at a time when support from our institutions for entrepreneurship may waver. We don't have to wait for people in formal leadership positions to do things. Each and every one of us can play our own part and contribute to finding solutions. We can use our personal and the collective resources of our networks for the common good. I want to conclude by suggesting that you can be guided by the mindset mnemonic which underpins the work of the Entrepreneurial Mindset Network. M, meet real needs. You could try to convince your institution to really focus on meeting the acute needs of students, business and society. I, innovate. You could suggest new solutions, not just incremental improvements. N, never act unethically. You could call out unethical behaviours in others and the system. D, dare to take risks. You could speak up and say what you really think. S, sell. You could convince your colleagues and leaders of the benefits of entrepreneurial thinking. E, exercise for productivity. You have to role model how to do even more with even less. And T, take the initiative. Don't stand back and wait for others. Have a sense of urgency and take positive action today. For more info, go to our website, click on the link about this webinar. You'll be able to re-watch a video of this presentation, download a slide with the Mindset mnemonic, download the leading change recommendations from the HE Innovate conference, and find out more about the online course, The Power of the Entrepreneurial Mindset. I'm obviously going to be happy to answer any questions in the webinar discussion today, and also feel free to email me afterwards at director@emindset.network. Okay.
Thank you very much for that, Paul. I mean, some very important behavioural insights there, which I think will become important across all policy areas for the future, as well as looking at how to deal with uncertainty. And I think earlier, Paul, you put aside a question that was posed by Fiona.
That was a mistake.
Yeah, a mistake. But you could also, if you want to, you could answer that question about maintaining a sense of community among students when they're not on campus. I think it's a really interesting and important question.
Yeah, I think it is. It's a really important question, because I think that whilst we might be thinking that we're all about to move online and that's going to replace traditional ways of teaching, I actually think what will happen is that we'll have what we've been talking about for 20 years, a blended approach, and we will have both the traditional mixed with online, and sensible choices, which I think Rui was talking about, sensible choices about when we use online teaching and for what purpose, and to make sure, as I was saying, that it's an active process. Going back to, and those comments are very much thinking about the question, in the sense that what's crucially important about learning is the social aspect of it. And I think that we would be wrong to think that that can be replicated online. I think we can go so far. It's really interesting, within the last few weeks, so many people now know how to use Zoom, they participate in Zoom. It's enabling us to keep in touch with each other, to have great discussions. All of that is really good. But as we all know, for certain activities, you can't beat being face-to-face and in the same room. And I think that's true of our students as well, especially because of all the things that go on at university that we don't know about, where students are interacting with other students from other disciplines, and great conversations are happening there because they happen to be in the same location. So I would say that we need to try a variety of different approaches to trying to not replicate that social activity, but to try and do things which enable students to interact socially.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I think there's a question which could be for you, Paul, and for, if Rui wants to come back in as well, about do you think that this pandemic increased the students' entrepreneurial mindset or their capacity to create a new idea?
Well, I'll give Rui a chance to think about that. I think that my thought is this. For me, being entrepreneurial is when you see a problem or an opportunity, and instead of waiting and thinking, why doesn't somebody else do something about that? You think, what am I going to do about it? And I think definitely, without using those words, entrepreneurial mindset, many people have been faced with the situation of, I've got to make this happen. How do I actually make this happen? I need to get shopping, I need to get medicine, I need to keep in touch with people. Somehow I've got to school my children at home, and I've still got to be working. And somehow, faced with those challenges, people have got inventive and they've got creative, because they've said to themselves, this has to happen. Somehow I have to make this happen, and it has to happen now. So I think that naturally drives out people's creative abilities to deal with problems.
I can bring another aspect of it, another angle. How do you teach entrepreneurship online? And I have a good comparison point, because I've been teaching in our executive MBA the course of corporate entrepreneurship, and I've been teaching it online and asynchronous, even before this pandemic. And now I'm teaching, and also in another MBA that we have, a full-time international MBA. I teach business model design, and I was forced to now teach online in synchronous mode. So I can compare both situations. In the beginning, the students that are already since the beginning of the year taking the asynchronous online course on corporate entrepreneurship, they felt weird, but then they got used to it. It's like in the beginning they felt, how are we going to do this? And now they know how to do it. And actually, if I get slightly late at posting the new video, they will complain because they got they get it, and they like it, and they perform well. On the current students that we had to migrate from presential to online, well, we've been trying to do so in a way that they still feel the same level of exigence, the same level of craziness that we try to bring with the entrepreneurial mindset to mimic the life of an entrepreneur in a startup. The only thing that we had to adjust is that we have a mantra, is that get out of the building. We can't say that, but they have been very creative. And for instance, I force my students to do customer development. And from class to class, they might need to talk with 30, 40, 50 potential customers. And the fact that they are not able to get out of the building, I was thinking and I was assuming that the number of customers they could engage with would have reduced. It hasn't. It increased. So there's always two sides to the same on the coin, you know. It raises challenges, it raises difficulties, but it also raises opportunities. And when students have the right entrepreneurial mindset, they adjust to any situation. So I wouldn't say that there is a particular problem in teaching and learning entrepreneurship as a course, entrepreneurship as a discipline, because you're doing it presentially or online. It just requires different approaches.
And just a last call to the audience, if you want to ask any more questions, I will have time for one more. But there's also one on our panel about student mobility. And have you really put in place alternative methods for student mobility of the international student at home instead of actually sending them abroad?
We have. On the inbound part, so the mobility that were in Porto, by the way, and when they went all home, they are all pretty much having classes non-interrupted. And by the way, one of the important things of the mobility was the social aspect of learning. And we have been trying to implement some community activation and community engagement methodologies, like the webinars. Like, for instance, today, at 6 p.m. Porto time, we're going to have a digital sunset with drinks, with, you know, we've been sending content, you know, we've been trying to, we went to all our archives and picked up all video content, reading content, and then we send it to them, and especially we nurture the relationship. So with international students, inbound and outbound, what we've been seeing is the capacity of compensating the lack of physical presence and the impact on the social aspect of learning, compensating that with proximity, with nurturing the relationship by providing more value. We've been saying this, you know, Porto Business School, even though we are part of the University of Porto, we are a standalone organization, and we survive only with the money from the tuitions that we charge. So we have zero public money involved, meaning that we are a business that is being affected, okay? And so we are dealing with that. It is an important aspect of this. And one of the things that we immediately understood is that this is not the time to sell, this is the time to deliver value. And this is what we've been trying to do with pretty much all the community, but with a particular attention to the international students. No special mobility programs, but a particular attention and nurturing that relationship with even deepest care.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. And we're coming now to the end of our seminar. If there are any other questions that you've posed, we will look at them. And I think Julia has written in the comments that you can send them to info@heinnovate.eu. So it's for me to thank everyone who's joined us for today's seminar, and thank you for your questions. To thank Rui and Paul very much for sharing your insights and expertise, and to Begonia and Lucia for introducing this seminar today. You can also contact us through the website or reach us through Twitter and LinkedIn. And we're going to take away the key points from the discussions and make it available as a short article on the website. So just to put in your diary, our next webinar will engage Otto Sharma on the 7th of May at 5 p.m. CET, and more information will be made available on that on HE Innovate early next week. So we very much look forward to seeing you there. So on behalf of the HE Innovate team, thank you once again for your time. Look forward to seeing you again, and have a wonderful rest of the day and weekend. Thank you.